make very brief remarks after the chairperson. Karibu sana. Where is Stephanie? Stephanie, karibu. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening. All protocols observed. Our chief guest, Honorable Lady Justice Njoki Ndungu, Judge of the Supreme Court. Waheshimiwa wote walioko hapa. All women, because today's theme is women in leadership. Na sisi sote tulioko hapa. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Maseki. I am a performing artist, both stage and screen, as an actor. I am a lot of things, but today I welcome you here. Trickle and Harness. Today we stand tall, looking at the beautiful time travels of human evolution. From ages when our great-grandparents suffered the fangs of slavery oppressions, to an age when women walk the corridors of power, yielding humility mixed with authority. As we sit in an era that has embraced a woman's empowerment, acknowledging the monumental existence of the female species of humankind, our hearts are filled with endless smiles and warmth, applauding the universe for aligning in favor of us all, both men and women. We raise our hearts in unison, tapping into the right dimensions of our present lives while holding tight unto the beauties of a possibility into the greatness of tomorrow. This blessed evening, my heart pours out to each and every single woman striding down the corridors of power and authority, redirecting the universe's path into the rightfully desired purpose from eternity past. So as we observe this beautiful modern tradition we are starting today, Trickle and Harness, we acknowledge that we are seated right at the center of the right age and dispensation. True change for women in power is not just about the trickle of opportunity, but the harnessing of that power to open the floodgates for those who follow. To every man who has been part of the Trickle and Harness for women in power, thank you. And may you keep fueling the tide that lifts us all. Thank
wow,
you.
Let's put our hand together for Stephanie. That was a very nice piece. If you believe there is no limit to what a woman can do, clap once. Wonderful, wonderful. Now I want to take the honor of welcoming Mrs. Evelyn Lele, the chairperson of Trickle and Harness, to make a few remarks.
Thank you. Honorable, our chief guest, Speaker, Njoki Ndungu, Judge of the Supreme Court of Kenya, and a dear friend of mine, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed elating to have you all in the auditorium of Kenya School of Government, Mombasa, this evening of the 9th of August, 2025. This is indeed a hallmark of many more public lectures organized by Trickle and Harness, Kenya. It's a first of our formal platform to challenge our intellectual faculties in diverse disciplines. This forum brings together experts that are trailblazers to exchange ideas with the public. We seek to inspire action on pressing societal issues. Our inaugural lecture by our chief guest will address women in leadership navigating the crossroads of politics, power, and patriarchy. With continuous emerging societal and technological challenges, at Trickle and Harness, we wish to create a trusted space for truth, learning, and enlightenment. This is more than a lecture series. It is a transformative platform where knowledge flows freely, empowering individuals and communities with actionable insights. Our future lectures shall impact disciplines such as health and wellness, legal awareness, development and economy, technology and empowerment, AI, which is indeed a very, very emerging area today, among others. We shall also explore education, art, and culture. Trickle and Harness Kenya, directors and founder members are in the house, and I shall introduce them shortly. We have Mr. Bernard Osero. You could be upstanding and wave to the audience. Mr. Bernard Osero is the vice chairperson of Trickle and Harness. We have Madam Jane Kimori, the organizing secretary of Trickle and Harness. And we have Bennett Zamba, the Secretary General of Trickle and Harness. I'd like to say something. Tonight or this evening, this event is a free event, especially for those of you here. We have given it to you gracious, but we look forward to partnering with you in future events. So we're looking forward to sponsors and corporates so that our subsequent events may be a real hit as we plan. Our directors and founder members are drawn from various professions. We have directors from the legal fraternity. We have directors from the managing, coaching, and leadership space. And we also have directors for communication and public relations, among others. We welcome you all to our inaugural lecture. Karibuni na asanteni. Thank you.
Makofi mazuri, thank you very much for that wonderful speech. Thank you, Chairperson. Now we will have some brief remarks from some representative here. I'll start with MCA representative, Ms. Milka Ngare. Tafadhali Milka Ngare. Yes, you have 2 minutes at most. Yes, at most to do your presentation. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much. Because I have 2 minutes, and I'm usually a very wordy person, let me read what I wrote so that I don't pass the 2 minutes. So our chief guest, Justice Njoki Ndungu, a lady that we see on screens, but so privileged to have her here close to us today. The organizers of Trickle and Harness, distinguished guests, fellow leaders, advocates of gender equality, and participants joining us for this important conversation. It is both an honor and a privilege to speak to you today on a topic that is deeply personal, profoundly relevant, and urgently necessary. women in leadership, navigating the crossroads of politics, power, and patriarchy. I have to talk from a familiar ground because I am a politician, so you will forgive me. The journey of women into leadership has never been a straight, well-paved road. Instead, it is often a rugged path, littered with invisible barriers and visible battles. As a woman in politics, I know firsthand that this journey begins long before the ballot is cast. It starts the moment you decide to step forward. When a woman declares her intent to run for the office, the challenges emerge almost instantly. Campaigning demands resources, financial, logistic, and emotional, that women often have less access to. Fundraising circles are smaller, networks are narrower, and is questioned before our manifestos are even read. In my own experience, I have seen how women must work twice as hard to earn, while men are assumed to be born leaders. Women are expected to prove themselves repeatedly. The political party system, which should be a vehicle for inclusion, often mirrors the inequalities we see. Remain dominated by men, and women are frequently relegated to supportive rather than strategic roles. Decision-making spaces are still controlled by a few, and access to those rooms is a fight in itself. Even after securing a seat, the hurdles persist. Patriarchal attitudes sometimes undermine the authority of female leaders. Misogyny may come disguised as jokes or tradition, but its effect is the same. It erodes respect, silences voices, and enforces an unspoken rule. The leadership is a man's domain. Male chauvinism can be subtle, but more often it is bold and unapologetic. Women are interrupted mid-speech. I hope I won't. Their proposals dismissed until repeated by a male colleague, or their ambitions framed as too ambitious or unfeminine. But we are not here only to make the problem, to name the problem. We are here to chart the solutions. What are some of these solutions? Legislative action. We must enforce constitutional and legal provisions for gender equity in representation, ensuring they are not treated as a symbolic but as binding. Economic empowerment. Political participation requires resources. Women must have equitable access to funding, training, and networks. Women in leadership must actively mentor the next generation, creating a pipeline of female leaders who are confident and prepared. Education, media, and community dialogues must dismantle harmful stereotypes about gender roles in leadership. Gender parity is not a woman fight alone. Male allies must challenge sexism with their circles and open doors for women. Thanks to the men in this room who are he for she, including Mr. Bernard Osero and the other several ones that I see. Colleagues, we are at crossroads. One road continues the old story, where patriarchy dictates the pace and power remains in a male's reserve. The other road, which we must take together, leads to true inclusion and opportunity and shared leadership. The future of politics in Kenya, for example, and indeed across the globe, cannot be built on the voices of half of the population. We must choose to walk this road together. I stand here not as a woman seeking special favor, but as a leader demanding equal ground, because when women lead, communities thrive, democracy strengthens, and nations progress. Thank you, and may we each live here committed to building a political landscape where gender parity is not a dream, but a reality. Thank you.
Wow, let's put our hands together. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now I want to call upon MLS Chairperson, Ms. Sharon Maiga, also to make a few remarks for 2 minutes before I call my fellow moderator to come and invite our chief guest for the main session of the day. Karibu sana, Ms. Sharon Maiga.
Good evening, all protocols observed. I'd like to welcome Judge Justice Njoki Ndungu. Thank you so much for joining us. And also the Chairperson for Trickle and Harness and all those who have attended. Probably just a correction, I'm not the Chairperson for Mombasa Law Society. I am a council member, but I have come here to deliver the speech on behalf of our Chairperson, Ms. Natasha Ali. Thank you. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us. Good evening, all protocols observed. Honorable Lady Justice Njoki, magistrates, MCAs, friends, and colleagues who've joined us, my heart is here with all of you. Unfortunately, I am unable to present and be part of this beautiful event. Honorable Lady Justice Njoki, a warm welcome to you here in Mombasa. The theme of today's conversation is necessary. You see, if you don't have these honest and raw conversations, it becomes difficult to create a space for women to lead. When you come into leadership, you quickly realize that leadership for women is rarely straightforward. It's a winding journey through boardrooms, courtrooms, through expectations and doubts, and very often through crossroads of politics, power, and patriarchy. At Crossroads, you learn 3 things. Politics will test your strategy. Power will test your character, and patriarchy will test your patience. But you also learn that none of these become roadblocks, they actually become training grounds. They sharpen your instincts, they strengthen your resolve, and they remind you why you stepped into leadership in the first place. Not just to hold a title around you, but to help others, to change culture and mold people. Yes, being a leader is always an honor, but also a responsibility. It means you're not just leading for yourself, you are holding the door open for other women who will come after us. It means you cannot afford to shrink, even if the room feels small. You will just have to learn how to adjust. To my fellow women leaders and the women becoming leaders, I wish to say this: don't just survive the crossroads, command them. Let politics see your strategy. Let power see your integrity. And let the patriarchy see your refusal to disappear. To my brothers in the profession, let's remember true progress is not when women are allowed to lead. It's when women leadership is no longer a surprise, but a headline. We walk this path with us. I am grateful for such forums. May we have more of this. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Wow, that was also beautiful. Asante sana. Thank you very much. Now we are heading to the core of this session, where I want to call upon my fellow moderator, Miss Lilian Oluoch, to come and welcome our chief guest. Tunalizungumzia swala zima la wanawake katika uongozi, yani swala la siasa, mamlaka na mfumo dume. Welcome, karibu sana.
The Honorable Lady Justice Njoki Ndungu, our chair, Mrs. Evelyn Lele, allow me to adopt the protocol that was set before. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lilian Oluoch. By profession, I'm an advocate. And allow me just to take 1 minute and reflect a little bit about the week that has just ended. Over the past week, I was part of a training organized by Mombasa Law Society, where we were coaching advocates on effective trial advocacy skills. One of the lessons we emphasized was the importance of a theme. And I know all of you here must be wondering, but what is this theme? In simple words, a theme is the central idea that runs through a story. The one sentence that explains what it's really about. And a theme isn't just for courtrooms. It isn't just for speeches. It's the stories for our lives, the challenges we wrestle with, and the causes we champion. So when I saw today's program, I asked myself, what is the theme? That's when it came to me, Mirror, Kio. Think about that, because today's subject invites us to hold up a mirror to our institutions, to our cultures, and yes, to ourselves. And I ask, do we like the reflection? If not, what do we do about it? Think about that again. Today's formal theme, Women in Leadership, Navigating the Crossroads of Politics, Power and Patriarchy, is one that makes you sit up straight. So if you're not sitting up straight now, please just sit up straight. I'll give you a moment to do that if you know you're not sitting up straight. And imagine that you have that mirror just ahead of you or in front of you. Today's topic is one that makes you sit up straighter. It's about the opportunity women bring to leadership, the cultural and institutional roadblocks they face, and the real practical ways to remove those barriers, not just for women, but for leadership itself to thrive. To guide us, we have someone who has not only walked the corridors of power, but helped build them. Lady Justice Njoki Ndungu, Supreme Court Judge, Constitutional Architect, Human Rights Champion, and the visionary behind the Sexual Offences Act, has transformed our justice systems in ways that will outlast all of us here. Our impact is global, from shaping Kenya's 2010 Constitution to championing women's rights and legal reform across Africa, to receiving honors such as the United Nations Person of the Year, the Jurist of the Year Award, and recognition by the International Commission of Jurists. Her voice carries weight in courtrooms, in parliament, on international platforms. But perhaps her greatest legacy is how she has inspired countless others, especially women, to lead boldly and ethically. Today she joins us, not to speak to us, but to speak with us, because the answers to these big questions belongs to all of us. So please join me by standing, and let's give a very warm welcome to Lady Justice Njoki Ndungu. Please let's clap as she comes in.
I'm not sure which one is working. Is it both? Oh, thank you. Oh, please be seated. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Let me thank very much the Trickle and Harness Board of Members, my dear friend, Chairperson. Thank you for inviting me here today. Let me also recognize members of the county government, the county assembly, my fellow members of the Law Society. I'm still a member of the Law Society. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to be here today. When I was asked to come to speak, I was told, come and talk to us about women in leadership. And I think I'm going to approach this topic in 3 ways. I'll give you 3 dimensions. First of all, we need to understand what is the purpose of women in leadership? And then I'd like to take you a little bit through the history of women in leadership. And finally, I want to just talk about my own story. I think it's a simpler way of approaching this topic in a way that is simple and that can be well understood. The question is always made to me for many years, why do we need more women in public office? Why can't men speak for the women? What is so special that women need to be in public office? But you do know that public office is where the decisions are made, where the decisions are made about how taxes are spent. Decisions are made where laws and policies that affect your life. Public office is about power and control. It is about the corridors of power that we heard about just now. And it's about who gets to sit on the table that makes the decisions that affect us. It's a largely male space, and that is why we've talked about patriarchy. And for the longest time in Kenya, it was an exclusive male space. But it must be understood that women need to be in public office. Women must be in public office. Women deserve to be in public office for 4 reasons. 1, women pay taxes. And therefore, where those taxes go, we need to have a voice. Every woman who goes and buys a kilo of sugar pays tax. Everything you pay for in the shops, you pay tax. Where is that tax going to, and is it coming back to serve you? The second thing is, we vote, and therefore we want to vote for people who represent us, but we also want to be voted for. There is the issue of representation in elective and appointive offices that we need to be represented simply because of the 3rd reason, the sheer numbers. 50% of the population means that we cannot be outside the door. We cannot not be represented on the table. And you know, when we say we want 50%, they say, those are too many seats, you're asking for too much. But we are half the population. We are only asking for what is rightfully ours. But finally, we must be in public office and we must have a seat on that table because men and women are equal, but we are different. Let me repeat that. Men and women are equal, but we are different. And therefore, our priorities are not the same. When you sit and decide what to tax, what men find to be a priority and what women find to be a priority are different. because our needs are different. Women, we focus on our reproductive, biological issues. You know, we have menstruation, so we want to know how much will sanitary towels cost. We have maternity issues. We want to know whether Linda Mama is coming and how much it will cost us to go to hospitals to give birth and what are the complications. We even have menopause. Some of us are reaching now. And that is not a concern of a man. A man would not know what is menopause. And therefore, when we are making policies and laws and determining where money goes on those issues, women must be there. And I'll give you an example shortly about how we, as women of Kenya, lobbied for the zero rating of sanitary towels as an example of why it is important for women to make decisions about things that affect them directly. Of course, this means that as we demand for space on the table, as we demand for our seats, you know we are also asking for those who are privileged and for those who already have power to give up something. Power sharing, as you all know, we are Kenyans, is very difficult. So as women, we are trying to get the nusumkate. The other side is saying we are not going to give you nusumkate. And therefore, we have to learn how to negotiate so that we are able to get what is rightfully ours, because we have been powerless for so long. Actually, the structures of power historically has been those who have power have been male, they have been healthy. In colonial times, they were white. And therefore, if you are a woman, you're black, you're poor, you're right at the bottom of the barrel. And that's a shift in power that we have tried to make. I find it necessary to walk you through a brief history about where women in this great nation have come from. When I was a young activist myself, about 40 years ago, for those of you who don't calculate my age, but for about 40 years ago, the political landscape was very different. Women were invisible. You could not find them in government offices unless they were below a certain job grade. Our participation was restricted to family, church congregations, community activities, family life. We also had single party KANU. So there you can be in the women's wing, but not in the mainstream of the national executive committees. Before we got independence, we had a team that went to Lancaster. You know in your history, you've all learned about the Lancaster talks. Did you know that there was a woman there? There was a woman among the Kenyans who went to Lancaster to negotiate about our new constitution for Kenya. Her name was Priscilla Abwao, but she was relegated to the sidelines, not allowed to speak. She was told to write a memorandum, which was ignored, and in history books, you do not find her name. But she was there. The first woman to be nominated to the legislature was a woman called Jemima Gashaga. She served only for 2 years, after being asked to step down for a man to take that position. You will not find her name in our history books. Then between 1969 and 1993, a span of 23 years, you will hear a little bit about some women. Grace Onyango, Eva Mwendwa, Eda Gashukia, Grace Ogot, most recently late Phoebe Asio. You know, just a sprinkling of women in a parliament then that had 108 members of parliament. But it was really Beijing, the Beijing conference in 1995, when the women of Kenya, the voices of Kenyan women started being heard within government. In 1985, first of all, a conference was held in Nairobi. So the government was hosting. There were no women ministers. There were no women to host. a women's conference. Can you imagine that? Such that in 1995, when the government delegation went to Beijing, President Moi hastily appointed the first woman cabinet minister. Because surely, how would a delegation going to Beijing be led by a male cabinet minister? And that is how the conversation started. And that the Beijing conference discussed many things, including how we stereotype women leaders, the sexism that exists. And at that time, Wangari Maathai, the Nobel laureate, was embroiled in a dispute with the government, exchanging words with the president on environmental rights about Uhuru Park. At the same time, Wambui Otieno was in a legal battle with her husband's clan about where to bury her husband. Both women were vilified. They were verbally attacked. They were abused by politicians on public platforms. They were abused in the media. Many women students, university students like myself then, that is when we started waking up and saying, why are women being treated this way? And that's when we started a more militant approach towards the defense of women's rights and the need for government to step in and prevent the abuse of the rights of women. By the way, much later in life, when I was in the 9th Parliament, I was with Wangari Maathai when she won the Nobel. And the first people who congratulated her on the floor of the House were the very men who had abused her many, many years ago. How life changes, how life changes. So at that time, the Kenya government of Kenya, it was very sluggish, just responding to international pressure, putting one woman here, woman one here. The first woman permanent secretary was appointed in 1987, but it would be another 10 years before Sally Kosgei was appointed as the head of public service, the first and last woman ever to hold that position in Kenya. So we continue like this, limping away in women's leadership. You know, we have 4 women MPs in 1992, 8 women MPs in 1997. But then, in 2002, when Mwai Kibaki won the election, something significant happened. As part of the promises that he made to women then, he appointed the largest number of women we'd ever seen. PSs, ambassadors, judges. Suddenly, women were in government. And at that time, the number of women MPs jumped from 8 to 18. And it was a very big number then. Yeah? I was in that parliament where we walked in and there were men making remarks like, now you women, you've come smelling, you smell with perfumes. There were no toilets for us. We were not allowed to walk in with our handbags into the house. They were not expecting women, so the institution, the structure of the institution was unwelcoming. But we still managed to do some work. I joined Parliament. I wanted to tell this story. And it was very interesting. For me, the first day entering there, it felt as if I had gone to a secondary school for boys. Because we were so few, and, you know, there was a lot of testosterone in the air, you know. And there were so many things that we experienced straight away. We were among the youngest women MPs who have come in, myself, Mbarire. There were 2 other young members of parliament. And we suffered. We suffered from sexual harassment, you know. Members who could not call us honorable, they used to call us my daughter. You know, because they had never seen, you know, these young people. When we go on maternity leave, they were like, what is that? Who goes on maternity leave in parliament? You're supposed to come to parliament after having children, not having them here, you know? And I still don't know whether parliament has resolved the issue of maternity leave in parliament, because what would happen is women MPs, you go and have your child and you come back, otherwise you lose your allowances, when you know that maternity leave is not supposed to be punitive. So I wonder if they have resolved it. I don't know how it is today. So there was a lot of what I call neck-down politics, and I'm sure those of you who are in the field, you see it as women. When we are talking about our issues, people are talking about our neck-down politics. How many children do you have? Who are you married to? How did you come? We are always forever talking about neck-down. And this is something we find to be a double standard. In campaigns, even where we work, that as women, we have to deal with that because nobody is listening to what we are saying from neck up. They are focusing on neck down. And I don't know why this is. It's part of culture, but it's also something we need to be talking to our young women about. I normally have a big program. I go to secondary schools and I talk to girls. I say, you have to understand that double standards to women will apply, but also we have to behave in a certain way. And I always say, it's very important to use brain power and not bottom power. Brain power gets you ahead, bottom power does not. I'm sure the women in this room understand, and also the men, you understand what I mean. So getting into parliament was interesting because we were such few women in parliament, but yet we had an agenda. And I want to challenge each one of you here, those of you who are women, who are going into leadership, that each one of you must leave a legacy. In whatever you're doing, whether you're in the corporate, whether you're in government, whether you're in politics. And your legacy must be, you must do something that has helped another woman. So when you are in a place like the county assembly or in the parliament, you must use that time to benefit other women. And men, by the way, don't worry, men. It's not as if we are not also working to benefit you. I'll give you an example. In 2004, we campaigned for the zero rating of sanitary towels. It was difficult because if you think about it, the amount of money the government makes from taxing sanitary towels, where all women between 11 and 55 every month have to buy sanitary towels. That is a lot of income. But we had to go and explain, what was happening. That making sanitary towels expensive was creating a situation where girls were unable to sit for exams, girls were dropping out of schools. It was going to affect the economy 20 years down the line. When these girls have not gone to school, it has an effect on the economy in general. And we engaged the mandarins in Treasury, and we discovered that there was a committee in Treasury which determines how much tax to put on every single item. And when they came to the sanitary towels, they had put them in the same category with perfumes and lipsticks and other women's things. Because in that committee, there was not a single woman who could say, sanitary towels are not lipsticks. Sanitary towels are not luxury items. And it made me wonder last year. I saw the taxation coming back. And I started wondering about the mandarins in Treasury. And I started wondering whether there are any women who are sitting in that committee who can say that sanitary towels are not luxury items. But now I'm a judge, so I can't do those things. Now those questions are for you here to ask. But it was difficult. First of all, so once we persuaded Treasury says, okay, the minister said, okay, I'm bringing the proposal to Parliament. But you have to convince the members of Parliament. Well, it was difficult. First of all, in that time, and they were very conservative old wazes in Parliament, how can you bring the discussion of sanitary towels? And their grandfathers, and in their homes they don't discuss those things. So we had to work out a strategy as women. One of the strategies was to look for the members of Parliament who were polygamists and who had many daughters. Then we go and sit with them and calculate. You see, every month. Like there was one who had 12 daughters and 3 wives. I went and told him, every month, the government is making this amount of money from you. He said, so you shop for them? I said, let us calculate. Calculate, The sanitary towel is 250 shillings times, you have 15 women in your house, times every month, times 12 every year, then times 12 again for the years they will be in your house. The guy was furious. He was like, the government is stealing from me. And therefore, when we went to campaign, you could see that both men and women gained. Your Excellency, welcome. Let us welcome the governor. Asante sana. So let the governor hear my story now. So he will talk to us after I've finished. So do you understand that both men and women benefited from the 0 rating of sanitary towels? The men, their pockets were a bit lighter, and the women now could avail. So sometimes women's rights issues are also positive for men. And it's very important that we work together as partners with men. The kind of policies and laws that we changed in the 9th Parliament where we were, we did the 0 rating of sanitary towels. We were able to introduce maternity leave, 3 months for women, 2 weeks for men. I'm sure most of you are young, you are enjoying. The law came in that parliament. We were able to introduce a condition to the political parties fund that says for a party to access the funds from the political parties fund, 1/3 of your National Executive Committee must be women. We were able to pass and get passed by Parliament the Sexual Offences Act. So all this we did when there was a majority of men in Parliament. There was not a majority of women in Parliament. It was a majority of men. Which shows you men can be sensitized on the issues of women if we engage them, if we educate them, and if it makes sense. Of course, for example, the campaign on the sexual offences bill, there were many strategies that had to be employed. For example, I spoke to many MPs' wives. I spoke to many MPs' mothers. I spoke to many MPs' churches and the mothers' union in those churches. So what happened, some of the MPs who were very opposed to the sexual offences bill, they could not say anything. Otherwise, when they go back home, they have to explain. But also we engaged MPs with doctors. Doctors came to explain. What happens when a child is sexually violated? What happens? What are the medical implications? We even talked about the cost implication of emergency, because rapes are normally considered in the emergency rooms, because when one is raped, you go to the emergency room. So what was the cost? Again, persuading my male colleagues on the issue of economics, why we need to have a law. What I find interesting, and perhaps, Governor, Your Excellency, you can help me, is I find as women, we have been able to organize ourselves around our issues. And that's, then we organize and then we push our issues through. How do men organize? I've always wondered, how do men organize? Because I've just said we are equal but different, so men also have their issues. How do men organize around their issues? I see some organizations sometimes of men, but those ones I see them organizing around the issues of women. not around the issues of men. And yet men have very serious issues. Or is it like somebody told me the other day, you go, you kamata 1 and 2 watching football with your friends, then when you go home, you're locked out of the house and you sleep in the car and you can't say. Because men don't talk to each other. So I'm challenging the men in this room. Talk to one another, organize. And nothing is the women's fault, because the men are not organizing. And when you're organized, you can ask us. Me, I'll come and give what I think. But it's very hard to help men because you're not organized. Men must organize. Anyway, let me get back to my topic. I wanted to say, what is the impact of women leadership? So it's going back to my original question, when I said, why do we need women in public office? And I want to say what I think the women leaders have done. One, area of concern, constitutional change. What needed to be changed? There were colonial laws. There was accepted discrimination on women based on culture. There was lack of adequate representation. There was inadequate health care. There was child marriages. There was unequal division of looking after children. There was human trafficking. There were a lot of issues. There was land issues. Before the Constitution, by the way, a woman could not transfer her citizenship to her husband. But the husband can transfer to his wife. A woman could not transfer her citizenship to her children. So all these issues were resolved in the Constitution of Kenya. And I always carry a copy in my handbag. I call it the Women's Bible. It's also the People's Bible. But for me, there are very many rights. And each one of you in this room, I hope you own a constitution, since we passed it in 2010 in the referendum. It's a very important document, giving you your rights, your freedoms, telling you what the obligations of government are. It's a little book that you must always have. So the Constitution achieved equality, non-discrimination. It introduced the 1/3 in the county governments. In the National Parliament, we have not achieved the 1/3, but we are no longer 18 women in Parliament. There are more than 80 women in Parliament. The Constitution has given women the ability to transfer citizenship to their husband and children. It has protected the land rights where women used to be disinherited and chased away. Women now have clear property rights protected under the Constitution. Women have human rights in the Bill of Rights, the right to dignity, the right to protection from violence. Equality in marriage is in the Constitution. Parental responsibility and child support is now the responsibility of both parents. Before the new Constitution, women were burdened. Not all, but some women were burdened with this. In Parliament, what have we achieved so far? Again, the impact of women in leadership. 0 rating on sanitary towels, although the tax is back. So that's something that needs to be checked. The Sexual Offences Act, the political party funding I spoke to earlier, maternity and paternity leave, the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, the FGM Act, and the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act. In institutions and policy change, we have been able, and we've seen, funds that allow women to get money. It's interesting also, I forgot to say, in the Constitution, we now have a provision that says where there is government procurement, 1/3 of those procurements should go to women-owned businesses. So that now also women can get a share of the government business. I want to just say, in the judiciary, we are also making some changes. We have courts that are specifically dealing with sexual and gender-based violence. We have one in Shanzu, we have 8 of them. We have been able, through jurisprudence and judgments, to settle some of the questions in matrimonial property, on the presumption of marriage, equal rights within marriage. Many more cases continue to come until they reach the Supreme Court. But I think that the presence of women in the judiciary, the gender sensitization of the male judicial officers has also brought in these results. I think it's important that as we celebrate the women who have gone before us, that we start to document so that we do not become like Mrs. Abuao, women who disappear because they are no longer, we don't know who they are, nobody wrote about them. I want to encourage us to write more about the women who have been before us. Each one of you comes from a village where there is a woman who did something exceptional. But we don't talk about them. And then it disappears. That history disappears. Let's protect that history, even as we're looking to the future. The second thing is that we need to be careful that where we have reached, we do not roll back. Like I've said, I pointed out about the sanitary towels, but I can also point out, you know, I am a Kenyan and I observe the 1/3 policy is not being necessarily fulfilled in all appointments. So again, we need voices to remind our leaders that they need to keep to the 1/3 principle. But as I wrap up now, because I didn't want to say too much, and as we look and see the impact that women leadership has made in public office, I think it's important for each one of you to determine how you will join women in leadership. It could be elective, it could be appointive. It could be to support other women. It could be to just have a gathering like this in which to share. I know when I look back, I think I may have left a legacy. Of course, legacy is not for me to say. It is for others. But I know that when I was young, I was raised in a home where there was domestic violence. And one of the reasons my career has gone the way it did on women's rights, human rights, is because I used to pray. You know, my mom and myself and my siblings, we used to be thrown out of the house. Sometimes my father, then he would take a bit to drink. When he comes, it would be a bit chaotic. My mom used to keep cows, so we would go and sleep there until morning. And I remember thinking, you know, when you are sleeping outside, and although I came from a very privileged background, my parents lived in Karen, in Nairobi, but then I just thought, we are just like another woman in Kibera or in Mathare who has been chased out of their home and is sleeping outside. So these things, they know no class, but they affect all women. And I remember thinking to myself, saying, what can I do to make women safe? How can women be safer? And if you track my history and my work, I have really worked to do my part in trying to see how can I contribute to keeping women safe. But still, women are not safe, still. Which woman here can walk in the street at night without fear? So we are still a long way to go. But at least today, if I was to leave this world, I think I can say I've done my part. And that is my challenge to each one of you who are here today. What will you leave? how will you help? How will you help another woman? I think I want to stop here. By the way, I know what the Honorable MCA was saying, because if you let me speak, I can speak for hours. I can now move from here, I can go into the Sexual Offences Act. I can tell you what it is there. I can now move, we can have another discussion. But I want to thank you very much. I hope that I've been able to share something for you to take home with you, and something that tells you that women must be in leadership, that women must partner with men in leadership, that women must sit on the table that is making decisions about them. I thank you.
Wow, that was nice. If you feel empowered, say yes. Yes. I want it louder, say yes. Yes. Thank you very much. Let me intervene a bit to recognize the governor, His Excellency, who is here with us. The chairperson, maybe you will allow me to invite the governor to make his remarks before we continue with the plenary session. Karibu sana governor, we know, tutampigia makofi mazuri, lakini kabla ya hapo, we know unajali sana hawa wanawake kina mama, that's why you created time to join us. Karibu sana.
Okay. Hamjambo. Is that okay? Good. Bennett invited me, and she was a bit disappointed. She told me the crowd, she was expecting that it was going to be filled up. But I can assure you, this is quite a decent crowd. So congratulations to the organizers for today's event. You have truly outdone yourselves. To the promise that I made was to be able to attend on my availability, not to attend on the availability of others. So I was going to come here whether we were going to be 1, 2, 3, or 100 plus that are currently here. I'm a bit conflicted. Last night, I call her little, but I don't think she's little anymore. My niece got married last night. The relevance of why I'm saying this here today is because she happens to be probably one of the youngest members of the bar. And when I was looking at the topics, it dawned on me that she wouldn't be where she was if it wasn't for those who were there before. And we go back to history. In 1967, Efio War became the first Kenyan state council, and later she became a first female high court judge and court of appeal judge. Fast forward, 1975, Kalpana Rawal was the first one to be brave enough to actually open a law firm in this country. Justice Mary became the first female Chief Justice in this country, all of them being women. And today, as we speak, 42% of judges in superior courts are actually women. As we speak, 78% of the registrars are women. And as we speak right now, 58% of magistrates are women. Statistics from the Kenya School of Law are that from the year 2020, the number of women has been increasing in the legal fraternity, and which goes to show that the scope is not just wide, the scope is endless. I recall back, I want to take you back before I became a member of parliament, when I became a member of parliament, and now that I'm blessed enough to be the governor of Mombasa. And when I was starting campaigning and trying to become a member of parliament, I noticed in every school event you go to, every madrasa event you go, it was always the women who would supersede the men in these events. My dear sister-in-law here, Fiona, who is the wife of the deputy governor, I made a comment about, was it 2 weeks ago or less than 2 weeks ago? And I had been invited to an event of the Catholic Women Association. And then I said, this is not my first, it's not my second, it's not my third, it's not my fourth event attending for the Catholic women. And over the years, being in public service, I've only been invited and only attended one Catholic men. And I turned around and I said, I need to have a word with my deputy governor and find out what exactly is happening. But it goes to show the women, being who you are not just a pillar, but I could comfortably say there are the pillars and the beams and the foundation of any steady society that we seek to have in this county, in this country, and for avoidance of doubt, in the world. When I became a member of parliament, a number of bills that are actually involving women. And I recall at one particular time, bearing in mind that we have so many cameras on me, I'd prefer not to mention this particular member of parliament. And there was something that needed a constitutional threshold for us to be able to pass in parliament. And being who I am, in the dining room of parliament, they have roses that are actually lined up on the dining tables. So I picked up all these roses after people had had their lunch, and I said, in solidarity of women, we need to be able to put roses on our lapels and our suits, just to show that we should be able to come up with the constitutional threshold, vote that 2/3 of us have been able to vote for purposes of enacting necessary laws that are actually a constitutional requirement that Parliament has to be able to do this. And one member of Parliament looked at me and he turned around, and I'll never forget it. He said, would your father be proud of what you're doing? And I asked why. He said, you know, you're trying so hard to do this for women. And I said, my father taught me that if you see any woman, treat her like a queen. And if you see any child who is a girl, treat her like a princess. And those are the values that we need to be able to put forward. And that is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Unfortunately, on that material day, the numbers actually became less, not because of the male members of parliament, but because the female members of parliament did not appear on parliament that day to vote on something that was actually going to be affecting them. When I was still a member of parliament, I remember University of Nairobi law students used to invite me and they'd have talks that I was meant to give. And I'd always go there. And you know, you mentioned about the Constitution. I actually carried a number of copies of the Constitution of Kenya and sent them to law department at the University of Nairobi right here in Mombasa. I don't know whether those copies are still in the library or not, but it is also a wake-up call that I've not been called for a while to be able to give a talk to the law students at the University of Nairobi, and I look forward to being challenged to be called. Probably at that time it was because I was a legislator and we were going through bills and we were trying to argue on what should and what should not happen in this country and where our votes actually need to be able to go when we're voting in Parliament as well. And fast forward when I became the governor of Mombasa. I think majority of our boards are actually women. Bennett is an example there. We have surpassed the constitutional mandate and the rule of law, from our CECs to our chief officers to directors, and actually to the staffing at the whole county government of Mombasa. We are way better than many other counties. I'm hoping that better does not mean best, because we can be able to do better than what we are doing currently. But even in that which I feel we can be able to strive higher, we have still been able to surpass many. Maybe what are the lessons that we need to be able to put forward today? One is that your numbers matter. Your numbers matter. You have been able to raise women in power from your presence whenever you go to the madrasas and the schools. You've been able to raise women in power through the numbers of you who take your children to our public health facilities and our public ECD facilities as well. You've been able to raise women in power through the little actions that you constantly are able to do. And in the words of the Chief Justice of Kenya, Martha Koome, flexible work and unending support and strong professional networks are not luxuries, but they are essentials. And maybe my parting words to yourselves. The people of Mombasa have made me lose my eyesight. And maybe my parting words to ourselves, each and every one of us here, is through history, we realize that every woman in power here today is part of a legacy. And that legacy can only be felt tomorrow for those who are going to stand where we stand today by doing what each and every one of us needs to do and give an opportunity and a chance to realize it is not an issue anymore about chauvinism. It is not an issue anymore about stereotyping our women, but if it was able to be done from the 60s, the 70s, all the way to the current generation that we have, I'm confident that tomorrow someone is going to stand on a podium, probably better than this, and say that I once stood on the shoulders of others, and those others will be mentioned by each and every one of your name. So thank you very much for the invite. Asanteni sana, and looking forward to seeing what we can be able to do to partner more. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, Excellency, the Governor, for adding your voice to the conversation, to this important conversation that we had today. Now, I know most of you have reflected on what Lady Justice had presented on. And I must say that it was an insightful presentation. And I know I'm talking on behalf of many of us here, that you're not just going to walk with notes when we walk out of here, but we are going to walk out with that mirror. Remember the mirror that we talked about when we started? Do we remember it? We are going to walk out with a mirror, perhaps with uncomfortable but necessary reflections that will be staring back at us. So before I open the floor to the audience, Allow me, Lady Justice, just to ask you a few questions. I hope we have a mic there. Lady Justice, your journey spans from Parliament, the Supreme Court, and the high-profile legal reforms. Looking back, what was that moment or the decision that most defined the leader you are today? Another question. You operated at the highest level of law and governance, but for many women, the barriers begin much earlier in community spaces, workplaces, and even at home. From your experience, how do we dismantle those invisible walls before they grow into systematic ceilings? We can start with those two.
Thank you very much. I'd have to say, for me, the highlight or the most important or the most significant part of my career was actually during the enactment of the Sexual Offences Act. It is a bill which I had brought as a private member's bill. The governor will know how difficult it is sometimes to bring this in Parliament. And I wasn't even sure that it was going to pass, actually. I had worked so hard, and I remember the morning when now I woke up, I got to Parliament at around 6:30 a.m. just to try and make sure that the second reading was going to be at 2:30, but just to make sure that everything was ready. And I remember then one of the parliamentary clerks in room 8 telling me there's a plan to scuttle the bill. And this is what is going to happen when you stand up to move it. There's a technicality, and they're going to kill it on the floor of the House before you move it. And that technicality was going to be raised by a heavyweight. That was Justin Muturi, who was then the opposition whip. And so I knew I was in a lot of trouble. So I consulted with my senior, Martha Karua, who was in the House Business Committee at that time. And she advised me that we ought to withdraw the bill for some time. And we waited for about 2 weeks before we brought back that bill. And in that 2 weeks' time, there's a number of things we did, including there was a number of members of Parliament who were vehemently opposed to the bill, vehemently. And somehow, I don't want to say exactly how, but there was a parliamentary trip that was going to Barbados around that time, and they all got on it. So as soon as they got on the plane, Honorable Karua told me, okay, let's now take to the House Business Committee, let's bring this to the floor of the House quickly, and let's deal with it as fast as possible. Because Parliament is interesting. You have to be, there are many tactics that you use. And I remember my father, by that time my father had been a changed man. He had left his drinking, we were now friends. He came to support me. So in that dining room you're saying, I brought my father for lunch, and then I was introducing him to as many MPs as possible. So I remember one MP came and said, Leo Njoki utatuona, hii kitu, it's not going to pass. And then I say, have you met my father? And say, oh, Mzee, sorry, we are going to support. I'm just joking with your daughter. But I remember, just when, the eyes, when they say eyes, the eyes have it. And the second reading passed. And I knew that this bill was going to become law. I have never felt, I can't even tell you how I felt, And all the women were in the galleries going, it was just an amazing time for, not just for me, but also for the women of Kenya. So I remember that significantly. On the barriers, there are many barriers. And as women, we will face barriers at each stage. I think what is important is to network, is to speak out. I remember one time before I came to Parliament, I used to work at the African Union, and I had a case of sexual harassment. I had a boss who was really, really giving me the hardest time. And I had to fight him, and he was a big boss. And I had to speak out, and everybody was so shocked, say, you know, we don't talk about these things, you know, in public. But I had to bring it out to make sure that and now the African Union now has a sexual harassment policy because of the case that I brought against him. But it means you have to be very brave. There's stigma, people don't talk to you, people don't want to be seen with you. So you have to go through that. You have to pioneer, you have to be the first person to beat it. So these barriers, they are there, but they can all be overcome. Networking, speaking out, it is possible to overcome the barriers.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that moment. And one thing that I take away from what Lady Justice has shared, you've heard her saying she reached out to a senior, she reached out to her father, and she reached out to many. So as women, let's remember that we're not doing this alone. We have others who can support us, and remind you that we always lift, when we rise, we lift others. Don't just rise alone, but lift others alone on your way there. Okay? Now, Lady Justice, my final question before I open the floor. For the young women and men in this audience who want to lead with courage in a world that may not always welcome their voice, what is the one mindset or habit you will tell them to adopt now? This is not just to women, but also to the men in the house. Yes. What is the one thing that you'll tell them, or habit that you would advise them to do or adopt?
I think it's important to wake up early in the morning and to meditate and to have a plan for the day. You'll find that once your mind is clearer, you're able to focus on whatever it is you have to do. But as young people, I believe that you need to speak out. As a young activist, I was very active, and I spoke out. Not always the best thing, because young people, you know, we say things loudly. Sometimes we don't think them through. But I think it's important that the voice is to be heard, but the ability to wake up in the morning, to have a quiet time, to meditate, to pray, and to plan your day. I think that is an important habit that we should have.
Thank you. May I request my co-moderator, Mr. Tuva, now to assist. I hope we have mic on the floor. And to the audience, okay, we have someone there. To the audience, it's now your time. If you have any comment, any question, please just raise your hand and the mic will come to you. When you do that, briefly introduce yourself and state the organization that you're coming from. Ask your question, be brief so that we may give everyone else a chance, those who want to add their voice to the conversation. And lastly, let's be respectful and adhere to the theme. Just raise your hand. We have a hand there, and I'll take the first 3 questions first.
Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Njoki Ndungu, His Excellency Governor Abdul Sharif Nasir, and all other protocols observed. Good evening. Yes, my name is Mohammed Jailani. I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the Student Association, University of Nairobi. And tumekusikia Governor, I'll start off with that. We will invite you very, very soon. And hopefully we can get more constitutions this time around. My question is, as a man, as a male, how can we step up and be more active in the advocating for women empowerment, and how can we do this as men without overshadowing, or in some cases they say mansplaining on behalf of the women? How can we progress this movement forward? How can we advocate for more women leadership without at the same time as a man overshadowing them? This question I think is open and could be answered by either of the speakers. Thank you very much.
Any other person with a question? We have a hand there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abla Ali. I am an international relations specialist, international lawyer, and I come from an organization called Young Africans Petroleum Association, and I am the current governance director. So my question for today, I believe that Kenya, we've come a long way when it comes to serving women, but what can we do to strengthen the legal system to actually be on ground, helping marginalized women in rural societies, rural areas, and also like the disabilities. Yeah, thank you.
All protocols observed. My name is Eileen Jepkurui, law students at the University of Nairobi, Mombasa campus. And my first question would be, with the recent over-sexualization of women in power, how then do we, as young people who want to take up these spaces, fight this? Being you went before us, you tackled it, how then do we proceed? And the second question is, how did you feel being as a justice now when you're practicing with the Sexual Offences Act, and it's something you enacted? How does it feel? Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps Lady Justice can answer those 4, and then we'll take the next set of 3.
Let me just start with the last question. So as a judge of the Supreme Court, of course, we do have cases that come before us that touch on the Sexual Offences Act. But what I always say is, I brought a proposal to Parliament called the Sexual Offences Bill. It was amended quite heavily by members of Parliament, and it was passed by the National Assembly of Kenya. So although people call it the Njoki Bill, actually it's an act of Parliament. And it's not my act, it is an act of Parliament. So just like any other law that would come with questions, or jurisprudential issues, I don't find that there is a conflict. When I sit with my colleagues, the 7 of us, we strictly apply the law. I now don't go into the background, you know, this is what I did, people went to Barbados, you know. Yeah, so it's the law is a Kenyan law. The proposal to bring the law was mine, but the law itself was enacted by Parliament. You heard what I said earlier about brain power and bottom power. I think young women is something you need to take quite seriously. So it's something when I was a young activist that we took fairly seriously. And then I think the generation which was behind me, we started getting the slay queens and that kind of language. I don't know what happened in the millennials. I don't know which generation you belong to. But I can see the Gen Zs are becoming a little bit more militant, and I'm hoping that that language and the behavior of bottom power versus brain power is a thing of the past. But I think for one to be taken seriously, one must engage what you have from your neck up and not from your neck down, and be very, keep those values. People don't forget. And if you go astray, people also don't forget. Yeah? So I think that's important. I think there are many young women leaders who are speaking out, who can be clearly heard, and who are not in the subset of the bottom power. So I want to encourage you to go in that direction. There was a question about empowering citizens. Please allow me to leave that for the governor. I think he's better placed to say how he's outreaching to people in the county and reaching the poorest of poor. I don't mind talking about the manosphere. Actually, I like to engage with this manosphere issue. Like I said, women have been organizing around their issues and are able to articulate them. And nowadays I feel worried for the boy child, but not in the same context, because the boy child's challenges are different from girl child. And therefore there's no competition. Sometimes when people talk about it, it's as if there's a competition There's a competition between the boy child and the girl child. There's no such competition because we are equal but different. The issues are different. So that boy child do not face early marriage, pregnancies. It's a totally different thing. So the empowerment of boy child and the empowerment of girl child is different. However, who should be responsible for it? I think that men should lead in terms of empowering the boy child. What I found is a lot of people coming to ask the women, what about the boy child? And I'm like, it's your responsibility. But everything just gets pushed to the women, you know? Whereas, as women, how would we help? How do we craft what it means to be a man to a young boy? How can we do that? That is really a responsibility and role of men, and I hope that men organize around those issues so that as we grow and we move on, we understand that we are not competing against each other, men and women. We are helping each other, but and hopefully, but I worry. As you know, social media, there's a lot of things happening in the manosphere where there's a lot of conversation which are sexualizing women, and I wish that we can bring that to a halt. And that will only happen, it will only stop when men start having different conversations. You know, like one of the things I get asked about is the issue of, you know, they say that there are a lot of young men who are in prison now under the Sexual Offences Act who have been convicted. And I say, actually, there are a lot of young men who are in prisons who have been convicted of murder, manslaughter, robbery with violence, but nobody ever talks about those men. Why? Because we tend to think that sexual violence is a lesser crime. And that conversation, therefore, needs to be had. Why do we think that it's a lesser crime? And what do we do about the issues of consent? How do we teach the young men what is consent? When is no, no? When somebody says no, is it a yes? How come? Because we teach our kids not to drive a car without a license, you'll go to jail. Don't steal money, you'll go to jail. But we never say don't have sex without consent. You will go to jail. But it's not something we're teaching our boy children. And I think we need to actually engage them. Before I finish, I can see that unless I'm getting old and I'm blind, are you sitting next to my former colleague in Parliament? Is that Abu Chiaba? How are you, Mzee? So that Mzee supported the sexual offences bill when I was in Parliament. Asante sana, Mzee. Yeah. Thank you.
I think most of the questions that have been asked are different, but in another way they're equally the same. One of the questions that was asked is, what can we be able to do? For me, I think the key ingredient is consistency. Consistency, I've said this once, I've said this twice, and I've said it many times, and I want to say it here again today. Your character is not on the large thing that you rarely do. Your character is built on the small things that you constantly do. Maybe let me repeat that. Your character is not built on the large things that you rarely do. Your character is built on the small things that you constantly do. 2, there was an issue that had been asked on what can be done. And I think this was Abla, she asked a question on what can be done to be able to strengthen the legal system. The first thing that you need to do is narrow down. What are the prohibitive laws that currently exist? Are they part of our imagination that we have these laws? Or do we truly have laws that impede the growth of women into power? And if we do have those particular laws, then the next question is mobilizing, reaching out. I've seen stakeholders, of course, I still engage. I'm a prime believer in consulting, in talking, in being able to converse with people. And even when I was a member of parliament, whenever a law that was going to affect the transport sector, I would call in the transport industry. It was affecting the shipping industry. I would call in the those who are in the shipping industry for us to be able to come and sit down, and many others. So you need to be able to, first of all, narrow down what are these particular laws that we feel are impeding us to be able to grow. There was something else that was asked on over-sexualizing women. And I've said this before, it got me into a lot of problems. We, as a country, there was a phase that we had where there was so much violence going on women. And I said this once, actually I was with the Chief Justice in an event. When I made this comment, the county government of Mombasa was opening up a safe house for women who had actually gone through violence, domestic and non-domestic violence as well, and mainly sexually related violence. And I said, I know the men will not take this very lightly, and I know I might lose a couple of votes from the men. But I said this, I said, a woman, you win a woman, you know, with two things. And first of all, nothing else is how you embrace a woman. How you, I'm not here to give you the art of seduction, dear men, but how you talk to someone, how you present yourself, and so forth. And then I made another comment and I said, if you truly get the urge to hit a woman, get into your wallet, remove some notes and probably hit her with some money. That might be a bit of, and I'm not saying that women are after money. Please let me not get into that. It was on a lighter note that we can be able to do better things with our emotions. A strong man isn't the one who can actually hit by a fist. A strong man is the one who can be able to control their heart and their desires through actions. That is what actually translates into strength. And lastly, a razor, a pocket knife, and an axe are all made from steel. One will be able to cut paper, the other will be able to cut meat, and the other will be able to cut a tree. It is the one who was forging that steel that knew what is as the blacksmith, that knows this particular generation that we want to be able to grow. What is it that we want them to be able to do? And by virtue of us being able to do that is what we can be able to come up with an axe that on one side could probably be able to chop a tree and the other side to split a log. It's the same steel. It's how it has been able to be forged. It's the same human beings that we have. How have we been able to talk to these young people? How have we been able to expose the young people? And I agree, it is not just an issue of differentiating us between our genders, but differentiating us, realizing that we might not all be the same, and we might not all be best lawyers, we might not all be best leaders, we might not all be best in something, but everyone can be best at one thing. We could not all be lawyers, we could not all be architects, we could not all be engineers. But amongst the population that we have, there'd be one person who's an excellent footballer. To be an excellent footballer. How are we going to forge, as the blacksmiths that we are currently. And we've been entrusted on this by the people of this country, by the Almighty, to be in the positions that we are in. How are we going to forge the future generations so that they can be what they rightfully are meant to be? So they don't go out with a razor blade trying to be able to chop down a tree. I think that would be my message to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've been just kindly been reminded that time is of the essence, so we'll take one more question, and perhaps if we can give this row a chance.
Thank you very much. My name is Stewart Isaiah Ndolo Oyoyo. I came here as a private citizen, but I also work at the county government of Mombasa. Mombasa and Coast region is known of very powerful women, from Mishi Mboko, Amina Mnyazi, even Aisha Juma. But there has been a statement that has recently ignited our sisters' wives. And in fact, I came with my wife. I wish she was here to listen to the response, but she has just left. Good girls don't get the corner of the office. This statement, many ladies have been on our neck from that statement of good girls don't get corner office. So we really needed a clarification on that statement, because this statement has made women make unconscious mistakes that have even sabotaged their careers in the future, just like Abuao that you had just mentioned. Thank you.
Let that be the last one.
Good evening, all protocols observed, our Lady Justice, our Governor, the Chair Lady. One is to appreciate this forum. My name is Engineer Elizabeth Waweru. Apparently, I'm just hearing lawyers, but I hope I believe I'm in the right forum. And I'm also an aspirant. I paid for of Women Representative Mombasa County. Last season, I was with him in our campaigns, and I was in position 4. So I was about to give up, but today's forum has really ignited me again. And indeed, I can say this was a good forum, and I would wish, you have mentioned about ladies who speak, should work as in from the mind, not from the bottom. But I feel as ladies who are aspiring to be leaders, we really need a lot of mentorship. And that's why you see our parliament today, the numbers, just the way our governor has said, there are those key things that need to be discussed, maybe about women, but women are not there even to support it. So we really need to be mentored. The ladies who are taking up positions, how we really need to have good mentors. And as for me, I already have a mentor to follow up. Thank you.
Lady Justice, we can take those.
Thank you. Good girls don't get the corner office. I even think there is a book that says that, and it just talks about how women in a male world, how we need to operate in order to get ahead. But my own experience has shown that you can get ahead. It's about just a question of how you engage. I read, there was a Harvard study about how men think and how women think. And I think men use more of their left brain, women use more of the right side of the brain Men use more of the left side of the brain. That's why women can multitask, and men find it very difficult to multitask. But also how you approach, because of the way, the parts of the brain that we use, they're different. So for example, when men, in this study, when men wanted a salary raise, they'd go in and they tell the boss, I would like to have this amount of money, and this is why I deserve. And the women would go and say, you know, I've worked here for long, and now I was thinking. So by the time they they don't even get to the point, and as a result, the women don't get the raise, but the men get the raise because of asking for things directly. So I think as women, there are things we can learn how to do, not by becoming men, but learning. I think that the title is deceptive, Good Girls. I think it just means that women just need to change. I remember, like in Parliament, when I was campaigning for a number of issues, I learned very quickly that I cannot go there and start demanding and raising my voice. That never works. You have to go, everybody, Mheshimiwa, please, you know, can you do this? There was a time, after, in Parliament, after work, there's also a place where some of the members of Parliament can kamata one or two. So you go, you tell the barman, give those ones around there, then you disappear. You know, they're just different ways of dealing it. But the most important thing is to be able to maintain your respect and decorum. And you can be feminine. Because also to act like a man can also sometimes be off-putting. But you also have to know when to be firm. I think it's a question of balance. I think that's what that question is about. Mentors are very, very important. And I'm so glad. Please keep up the good work. Don't give up. Many women who have run don't get it the first time. They'll get it the second they get it the third. If you talk to people like Martha Karua, Charity Ngilu, many of the women who have made it, they didn't just start like that. They fell, and then they stood up, and then they walked again. Don't forget that failure is one of the steps to success. You know? If you just are successful immediately, then there's something wrong with that journey. So, well done, congratulations, and please keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor, if you'd want to add your voice to that and also give us a parting shot, then I'll come back to Lady Justice for a parting shot.
Oyo is, I was hoping he was going to say that he came because of me, because he works in my office, but he told me he came as a private citizen. But I think Oyo is one of those who would listen to my talks when he was in law school. And today is working at the county government of Mombasa. The word that was used in today's terminology, that a good girl does not necessarily get the corner office, was amplified by my sister Millie. Millie Odhiambo, I served with her for 2 terms, and she said, I didn't get to where I am by being a good girl, I got to where I am by being a bad girl. And I call on everyone to be a bad girl. I think it was taken out of context. She did not mean a bad girl in that sense. What she did mean, bad girl Millie, was that you need to be tough, you need to be strong in what it is that you're doing. It does not necessarily mean for you to be able to get nasty by definition of the word nasty. What it simply means is that you need to be tough when tough needs, you need to have love when love is needed, and you need to have diplomacy when diplomacy is required. And you know, I equally need to be able to just state a successful human being is not necessarily defined by them being in politics. I think Oyo was mentioning that all the names he mentioned were actually politicians. Mombasa has been able to generate quite a number of seasoned, the banker, today the KCB managing director, Anastasia happened to be the manager who started at KCB Treasury Square, then she ended up being the regional manager, and today she is the KCB managing director in the whole country. Mombasa has been able, and the region has been able to have career diplomats as well. We've had a significant share of those who are lawyers, engineers as well. So success is not defined by being in politics. I say this as well is because I'm hoping that within a period of 10 years, I did my 10 years as a member of parliament. I hope that I did it well after 10 years of being a governor, and I hope that after 10 years of being governor, I'll be able to metamorphosize into something else that I can also be able to be good at. But then equally, I didn't get your name. I'm sorry. It is unlike me. But we were together in the campaigns, and I want to tell you, one of the greatest presidents in the world actually lost quite a number of times before they won, Abraham Lincoln. And I also want to tell you that if you take one drop, it'll have zero impact. But when that drop is going to be consistent, that drop can be able to create a hole in a cave, in a rock, and make it a cave. So what you need to be able to do is be consistent on what you do. Don't disappear and let people see your face just 6 months before the elections or 3 months before the elections. You need to do what needs to be done. Move it with a passion. I advise you to read a book called Mastery by Robert Greene. It actually talks about exactly what it entails, that when you want something, this is what you want to achieve, regardless of your background, regardless of anything else, you can be able to get what you want by being persistent at it and never losing focus. It probably will not happen today, it probably will not happen tomorrow, but with persistence, it will eventually happen. And those were my parting words. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can have a parting shot from Lady Justice. One parting shot.
My parting shot, I'll just follow what the governor said. There's another book by Robert Greene called The Art of War for Women. Let me encourage you, each one of you, to get a copy of that book. It shows you how to manage and to lead in a man's world. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone who asked a question and to all who listened so attentively. Today's conversation has reminded us that leadership is not just an office you hold. It's a responsibility you carry every day in the small choices as much as in big decisions. Lady Justice, Your Excellency the Governor, you have shown us that navigating politics, power, and patriarchy is not a woman's issue. It's a societal issue, a leadership issue, and most importantly, as Lady Justice said, a legacy issue. On behalf of the organizers and everyone here, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to moderate the session. Thank you for your time, for your wisdom, and your example. Let us live here determined not only to applaud good ideas, but to live them. And when we look into the mirror, that mirror that we started talking about tomorrow, let us see not just who we are, but who we are becoming. Leaders of courage, conviction, and justice. Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for the Lady Justice and also His Excellency the Governor. Sante.
Wow, that was nice. That was wonderful. And remember, this is just the beginning of this conversation. We continue with this conversation. Now I'll call upon Mr. Bernard to come do the vote of thanks. And remember, we are going to have a group photo here immediately after this, and we have some gifts for each and every one of you by the time you're leaving. And there's somewhere where you can drop your business card. Karibu sana, you do the vote of thanks, then we do the closing prayer after the photo session.
very much, James, our chief guest, our governor, Your Excellency, honorable leaders from different walks of life present here, dear guests, friends of Trickle and Harness. On behalf of the entire Trickle and Harness family, I say thank you. Your presence tonight has turned a simple vision into a living reality. To our chief guest, your humility and your inspiring words have touched many hearts here. You have reminded us that true leadership is not about titles, but about courage, about grace, about service. To all our guests, near and far, thank you for your time, your energy, your belief in this cause. Real change begins when caring people gather with purpose. And you made that happen tonight. And to those watching us live, we are grateful you shared this moment with us. A special thanks as well to the dedicated streaming crew working tirelessly behind the scenes to bring these images to you. To the management team of the School of Government, Mombasa, thank you for making available this outstanding, well-furnished venue, which has added color, warmth, and character to this event. We sincerely thank all who contributed to the preparations of this event. Special appreciation goes to the students of the University of Nairobi, Faculty of Law, Mombasa campus, for their important role in coordinating key activities. Tonight, we have planted a seed of dialogue and faith. May it grow into a culture of enlightened, humble leadership. Let us carry this flame with us into our homes, our workplaces, our communities, so that tomorrow shines brighter because of what we started here. From the bottom of our heart, thank you, safe journeys, and good night.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bernard Osero, who is one of the brains behind this, led by our chairperson over there. Now, I'll call upon Betty Wesonga to come do the closing prayers for us, and then we will be able to leave at our own volition. Karibu sana, Betty. We will stand up as we do the closing prayer. Mumekaa sana, nyosheni kidogo miguu. That is better, yeah. Yes, tell your neighbor imekuwa mzuri. Mwambie imependeza. Thank you. Karibu sana.
Let us pray. Loving Father, thank you for this moment, for this gathering, for the insights, for the reflections, the conversations, the experiences that we've shared tonight. As women called to lead in a world of shifting power and deep-rooted patriarchy, we pray that may you grant us courage to stand firm, to share with wisdom from you, to lead with compassion and faith, and to keep pressing forward despite the barriers. We thank you even for the men you've brought in our midst tonight. May we live here united, uplifted, and ready to transform the spaces that we shall enter. In your holy name we pray.
Thank you. Turn to your neighbor, mpatie high five. Mwambie asante kwa kuja. Mwambie tukutane next time. Thank you for coming. Now, yes, we have photo session now. We'll start with the two of you first, and then you'll join. Yes. Second, the three chairperson together. You okay with that? Together with the chairperson. Third one, karibuni, all the dignitaries, Johnny, karibuni, washimiwa. Yes, take the photo together. A wife to the deputy governor. Yes.